GCS Smartists. We are going to be making positive and negative space trees. Now the tree is just my suggestion. If you would like to do a simpler shape, that is completely up to you. You could even do a heart. If that's where you're at, that's where you're at. Now I'm going to show you how to make a spooky tree. This is the time of year when the leaves start to fall off the trees and the owls are finding places to roost. And so you can see that I have created this positive negative space, so-called noten. And noten is a process by which you take half of an image and then you flop the positive and negative spaces of the two sides of the image. And you can do more than two, but this is essentially what we're going to be doing here, cutting out half of a tree, flipping that internal puzzle piece, that positive space, over to the other side, leaving the negative space of the paper that we cut on this side. And it's very exciting. It's a little bit tricky to wrap your head around it, but it's very satisfying as you get it done. So at the very basic level of positive and negative space, we see that the positive space is the object that we're looking at, the object or the element of the composition that we are looking at. And sometimes that is the brighter side. In this case, I have a piece of paper that I have cut, and it is 4 inches on the short side and 11.5 inches on the long side. That's because this piece of paper is 12 by 9 and I just wanted to have a little bit of a border. So you will need a piece of paper that is light colored, that is half the size or a little bit less than half the size of a dark piece of paper. The light and the dark create that contrast between the positive and the negative space of the noten. And so what I want you to think about now is that we are going to take a chunk or a positive space of this piece of paper and we're going to flip it over onto the dark side. I am going to therefore draw half of a tree on my white piece of paper so I can cut it out and flip it over to this side. This part of the project is going to just be a tutorial on how to draw a spooky tree or a tree without leaves. So I am going to start by imagining this is the center of the tree. This is going to be the ground, and I can start to make the ground a little bit lumpy, and then as I get toward the center, I want to think about the trunk of the tree. So I start to come up. The concept of this tree is that it's going to go from widest to thinnest as it goes toward the twigs of the tree. So here's the trunk, and the trunk is getting thinner as it goes up, and then I'm going to make a branch. This is completely at random. I don't want to go all the way to the edge because then I'll cut off this little piece of paper. It'll be harder to do. If you do go all the way to that edge, just remember that this side stays here and the other side flips. And so I am just going to keep creating some very random shapes for my twigs, very thin. My branches a little bit wider, all the way back to the trunk, which is the widest. So I think about this as half my tree, and do I want to add anything else or subtract anything by redrawing or erasing? I think it looks okay. This area here is a little bit odd because this section is thicker than this section. So I could change that a little bit if I wanted to. This section has the same problem, very lumpy. In general, I think it's okay. You can also make roots if you want. And I'm going to erase this part right here, just so I don't have extra pieces of paper to deal with. It's hard enough just to cut out this one shape. Okay, so you can also think about what else might be in this tree. There might be a knot. There might be a branch inside of a branch. There might be a hole where an owl could live. And maybe the owl is sitting inside of there. And so even though it's a little bit hard to conceptualize half of a tree, that's essentially what it looks like. As long as all of your lines are touching the middle, it will be perfectly okay. So then you take your scissors. This is where things get a little bit tricky, and you have to remember this is like a puzzle piece. So as you cut out your tree, you can only stay on the lines. Only stay on the lines. You cannot cut through anything because you want both pieces to look great. Therefore, you are going to have to use a special technique for cutting where you turn the paper instead of the scissors. I think about this like steering, and I am turning the paper so that the line feeds into the scissor mouth. Nom, nom, nom. Nom, 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 nom. This fits in perfectly, and then I just flip it over, and now I can work on the next part. You'll see that the tree is made up of negative space on this side, and it's made up of positive space on this side. And now I'm going to start to cut out the knot. Now it is time to glue things down. I am actually going to flip everything. So you take your glue stick, and I'm going to suggest that you have some sort of mat, that you don't mind if it gets some glue on it, because you really want to make sure that you get the glue all the way to the edges, which will include rubbing it and getting glue on another surface. You'll notice that I am pulling the glue stick along the edge so that it doesn't gather extra glue in the corners. Now I want to line this up with the negative space. So, just like a puzzle piece, I lie it down so that the positive and then a negative space flip-flop on that line of symmetry. Now once your glue is dry, if you'd like to, you can get in there and erase the lines that you made. You can also add watercolor paint to this, especially if you use the thick watercolor paper. If you see any pieces that are still flopping up, you can also get in there with the glue stick and connect it very fully. Now this might be where you'd like to stop. That's fine. You've done a lot of good work. But if you would like to paint it, you can. You will need some water, some watercolor paints, and your positive negative space tree. First thing you want to do is to get your brush wet and put water on the watercolor paper. I'm going to get the color that I want. I think I'm going to go with red, and I just tickle the top of this cake until the paintbrush has soaked up the color. And I start dripping it into the wet paper. If you would like to change colors, please make sure you scrub on the bottom of your bowl in order to make sure all that is gone. I'm going to get the blue cake wet next and allow it to mix on the wet paper. You'll notice that I'm not actually painting, I'm just dripping the paint onto the wet piece of paper. It mixes by itself. Ta-da! Positive, negative, space tree. You are so pretty to me. Meow? Oh, I mean, bye!